I run ultras for fun. Yes, I do find them fun. And so when you are more advanced, and not that I'm crazy amazing at running, but when you spend a lot of time with running, you start to understand it more. And so I have some perspective that I think a lot of newer runners or people thinking about getting into running don't have. And so I'm speaking more to the beginners. If you've been running for a while, this may not necessarily apply to you. But I want to talk about some mistakes people make them not enjoy running. It pains me when I'm talking to someone about running. They're like, I want to get into it, but it's just not for me. Or it hurts too much. Or it just like, I break down. It's not healthy. No, that can't be right. Like, running is healthy. Obviously, if you have some like screwed up knee or you have something broken, like, I get that. I understand that, everybody is different. But if you're just like haven't ran for years, like, you can get into it and enjoy it. I just think some people are making some mistakes that cause them to start running for a week or two and then they stop because of an injury or it's just not enjoyable. And I'm all on board with the David Goggins mindset of like, do something you hate and that makes you better. I'm all for that. That's why I like do cold plunges and cold showers and things like that because I hate the cold. So I'm trying to fulfill on that part of the mindset of doing things that actually just suck. But personally, for me, I don't feel like running should just suck, right? David Goggins says he hates running. That's why he does it. I think that's good if running is the thing you do that you hate that helps you develop that mindset and that grit. That's awesome. I think running should be enjoyed. At least for me personally. I'll speak for myself. I want to enjoy running. And I think that's where most people are at. And they want to do something hard, but it can be hard to just do something you hate every single day. So I think you should. I'm just trying to hit the point that like running should be enjoyed in my perspective. And it's such an amazing thing. And I would maybe even argue that even, I don't know David Goggins personally, but I think there is some sort of enjoyment or really satisfaction he gets out of it. And so I want to talk about some things that will help you be more satisfied, fulfilled, and enjoyed running. So the first thing to talk about is if you run every run hard, you will maybe potentially get burnt out and hate it, and you might get injured. And so if you're a newer beginner runner, what I would do is you can pause my video or stop watching it. I would rather you go learn about heart rate zone training or zone 2 training when it comes to running. Because this is the thing that helps people avoid burnout, in my opinion, when it comes to running. Like, again, I'm all for grit. Like, if you just hate it and you do it every time when you show up and you're disciplined, that's amazing. What I think I see from a lot of people getting into runners is they start it and then they pull away because it's too hard. And so here's what I want to talk about is with zone 2 training, what this is you're running at an easier, lower heart rate, and everyone's zones are different, so you have to find a way to calculate it. But most people, when they start running, they're completely in zone 3, zone 4 every single time they run. So increased risk of injury and potentially just burned out because it's like hard, right? That's hard running. And so what I think is a healthier way to approach it is, let's say you run 3 days a week. 2 days a week you run in zone 2, or you do an easy run. That's another way people put it. And then you run hard the other day. I really do think you should do both. There's the argument out there when you get into zone 2 training that you just do zone 2 only for 2 years to build up a base, and you will. I just think you can do both and not injure yourself, and it's still good to run fast. It has its different benefits and different feelings, and it will help you get faster if you run fast more regularly and consistently. But I'm really focusing on those easy runs. Because when I started doing zone 2 training, I was at 14, 15-minute miles, meaning I would run, my heart rate would dip into zone 3, then I'd have to walk, and then I'd run again. Or even up on up hills, I had to walk most hills as I started to build that base. And at the time, it was frustrating because it's not flashy to run 14-minute miles, but I knew and started to understand about zone training and building that base with zone 2, zone 1 running. And so now I'm very proud of it because I've progressed. So I started at those 14, 15-minute miles in zone 2. Now I run 8:30s, and maybe a decade from now I'll run 6-minute miles in zone 2. And so this is one thing that helps avoid running burnout, because not every run is just a grind where you're just gasping for breath, right? When you do zone 2 training, at least for me, it's a little bit, it's like speed work is euphoric in its own way, but zone 2 running is euphoric too, because you just find this rhythm It's not too uncomfortable that you're just like fighting in your mind to try and keep going, but you're just a little more casual. You can think through problems a little bit easier because when you're sprinting, you're like only thinking about you can't wait until it stops, right? Or you keep thinking about how painful it is. So zone two is like just meditative, and I think it's one of the things that really drew me to running because I started doing zone two early in my running career, where I think a lot of people take too long or don't even know about it. And so if you want to enjoy running, implement those easy runs because then you're not just destroyed and gasping for breath 3 days a week. Maybe you just have 1 day a week where you get faster and you get the benefits from that speed work, but the other 2 days or 3 days, it's easy running. Now, the other thing that I think happens with people hating running or not enjoying it is they get injured or it hurts. Like, I mean, that's just the way it is. Who wants to run for a week, get a knee injury, and then just keep pushing through that, right? I think most people watching this want to stay healthy and don't want to work through injuries, right? They don't want to like tear something and still run. Like there's people out there who they have their goals and that's important to them, and I'm not arguing against that. I'm just, if you're one of those people that want to enjoy this, do it long term, not let it injure you and affect your daily life, then what we have to do is we have to stretch. And I am fortunate that I got my yoga, Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. My yoga certification in 2018, and I roughly started getting into running around that time or a little bit after that. And so I understood the power and importance of stretching early on. But what I want to make a point of is most people's injuries aren't injuries, in my opinion. I think what happens is they're too tired, they're not strong enough. So I made plenty of videos on strength training. When it comes to stretching, if your quad is incredibly tight because you never stretch and you sit at a desk all day or you drive trucks or whatever it is, and then you run, your muscles contract and push even more, and then they tighten after you cool down. Like, of course it hurts. Of course your knee hurts because your quad's so tight it's pulling on it. Or your hamstrings are pulling on your pelvis and your back. Or your calf is pulling on your ankle. And so the majority of injuries I really do think is just a lack of mobility. Because my point I just made of like things being too tight and pulling on things. And so if you're one of those people where running just hurts so much, you should probably really consider stretching. I know for the first 2 weeks or couple months of running, if you're going from never running ever and getting into running, that is going to be a little bit more uncomfortable because you're not used to it. But one way to help make it less uncomfortable is by stretching. So the thing I tell everyone when I talk about stretching is if you don't have enough time or you're not going to do 3 or even 1 yoga session a week, that's fine. What you can do is just add on 5 to 10 minutes of stretching after every run. And so just build it into your schedule. If you have an hour to work out, run for 15 minutes, stretch for 10 minutes at the end. Or maybe you wake up a little bit earlier or start a little bit earlier so you can run for the full hour and you stretch for 10 minutes. I would just rather someone, especially new, getting into running and trying to get more comfortable and it's just painful or hard for them. I would rather see runners run half a mile or a mile less on each of their runs and throw in the stretching. So if you really don't have the time, which I think we all get as an excuse, but if let's say, I get it, like you're a parent, you got 4 kids, you got 3 jobs, right? But you're still getting in your exercise, I think what you do is you reduce your volume of that run by a little bit and implement stretching because it's just matter of factly going to like reduce your risk of injury. And I feel so much better when I stretch after a run throughout the day than if I just run and go straight on with my day. I think my body starts to kind of, like not lock up like crazy, but it starts to get tighter, right? You just use all those muscles during the run, and then you're warm, and then you start to like cool off and tighten a little bit. And so I notice a big difference when I stretch after a run versus when I don't. And I do not deal with injuries. I do not have shin splints. I'm sure I might go through something in the future, like there's no guarantee. But the question I ask myself when an injury comes up is what could I stretch that might help with this? So runner's knee, when I started doing like stretching out my quads, that went away. And I also were doing tibialis curls. That definitely helped strengthen my leg too. If I have back pain, I stretch out my hamstrings and hips. The calf is just good in general too. Like it's all connected. And so I think you take 5 to 10 minutes after every run and you do a quad stretch, a hamstring stretch, and a calf stretch. And that is just plenty, Like if you run 5 days a week and stretch for 10 minutes after every run, that is 50 minutes of stretching. Like that's a good amount. So hopefully you got something out of this video. I want you to enjoy running. Running quite literally saved my life, and so I'm trying to hopefully give something that will help you enjoy it more and be easier on yourself, so then when you have to go hard, you can go as hard as possible. I think running's such a beautiful thing. So if you like this kind of stuff, consider subscribing. But if not, I still hope you got something out of the video, and I hope I get to see you in another video sometime soon. Peace.